What is
They're
it?
hurting me.
How are they hurting you? How are they hurting you?
They're
Huh?
pushing my head down.
Alright, ask them to stop.
Please stop.
Ask them to stop.
Stop.
Ask them to stop. There you go. Just breathe. Ask them to stop.
I don't want to hurt you.
Is that what they're saying? Okay. Ask them what they want.
What do you want?
Hello again, friends. This is Mike Nicholas, and welcome back to the Soul Unleashed podcast. It's been a little while since I've done a podcast, and I hope the wait will be worthwhile. This is part one of a two-part series that deals with some, in my humble opinion, very unusual things. The recording you just listened to was a real recording. It was done by a friend of mine. It's a very small snippet of about a 10-minute recording, which I'll share with you later. She wishes to remain anonymous, and I'm respectfully doing that. But I want to talk about what happened in that cemetery, which is where we were. The incident that you're about to hear took place in a church cemetery, which is part of the Mount Zion Baptist Church. Sometimes it's called the Old Baptist or the Baptist Meeting House in the 1800s. The church dates back to 1851, and attached to it is this very old graveyard. And the graveyard has a cemetery wall around it, which pretty clearly delineates the graveyard. However, there's also an area outside the graveyard, which is where enslaved people were buried that were not welcomed in the actual graveyard itself. And so there's an area that's a little hard to see on the map that I'm showing for the my YouTube friends, but you can see there's a enslaved area outside the wall. The reason the orientation here is important is because of the story I'm about to tell you. So this church was a scene of a major conflict, battle, if you will, in 1864 as part of the Civil War. And the church was next to a farm called Skinner's Farm. And 1864 was, the war ended in 1865, but 1864, Northern Virginia was still a very active battle area, combat area. And the chief thorn in the side of the Union forces in Northern Virginia was a gentleman named John Singleton Mosby, or Colonel Mosby, and he was the commander of Mosby's Rangers, and they were basically a partisan or a guerrilla outfit, but they were highly effective. Captured a lot of Union troops, destroyed a lot of Union equipment, and they were so much a problem that the Union assigned a cavalry unit of the North specifically to hunt Mosby and to try and capture or kill him. And that unit was led by a major named Major Forbes, and he had two cavalry regiments that were attached to him, the 2nd Massachusetts Cavalry and the 13th New York. And their job, very difficult, was to try and find Mosby. Now, the men who were part of Mosby's Rangers were from mostly Loudoun County, Northern Virginia, and they knew every hill, every alleyway, every stream, everything in Northern Virginia. So it was very hard for Forbes to do what he was doing, but he was a very able commander. And the day that the battle happened was on July 6th, 1864. And Forbes left Fairfax, Virginia, with about 150 cavalrymen, and they went up to Leesburg, Virginia, which is quite a hike, and they were coming back to Fairfax via Aldie, and then to this area near the church and Skinner's Farm, where they rested their horses and gave them water and whatever. And that was about 6:30 on the evening of July 6th. It was a sweltering hot day. So Forbes was disappointed that he wasn't able to find Mosby, but he was heading back to their quarters. Now Mosby knew what Forbes was up to, and all throughout that day of July 6th, he kept trying to set a trap that Forbes might go into. But Forbes did not do what Mosby expected him to, and so there was no trap that Forbes walked into. However, about 6:30 that night, Mosby found Forbes near this church and farm, and he decided to attack. and he opened up the attack with he had a small cannon with him that started scattering the horses of the Union soldiers, and it became a complete running battle, very chaotic. Forbes managed to rally the Union troops. Mosby pushed them back from the farm up against the church, and Forbes was able to actually create a pretty stout defense initially, but he expected Mosby to do a kind of a classic cavalry charge against his troops, which were lined up, expecting to receive this charge. And Mosby was having none of that. Mosby was all about speed, and his men didn't even use sabers. They used a revolver in each hand, whereas the Union cavalry was set there with their sabers waiting for a charge. Anyway, after a few very brief minutes, the Union was routed, and they pushed them back against the church. There was a stand made against the wall of the church. Some men died there, uh, and then became a running battle where Mosby's men chased what was left of the Union troops down something called the Old Carolina Road. I have a little picture with the Old Carolina Road. It still exists to this day. It's a it's an old Indian trail, but back in the day, there was no Highway 15, which runs north and south in that area. That didn't exist, and the Old Carolina Road was the main road. But Mosby soldiers were chasing the Union troops down that road. At the end of the day, Mosby had attacked the 150 cavalrymen of Forbes' command with about 250 Confederate cavalry, and the Union was routed. They lost about 13 men killed, but up to 100 wounded, killed, or missing, captured, and about 50 survived. For his part, Forbes was captured, and he was as I said, he was a very capable commander. Right in front of the church there, he was fighting Mosby himself. It was kind of unusual, but they came up to have a personal fight, he and Mosby, and Mosby went to fire his pistol, his revolver, at Forbes, and it misfired. That gave Forbes the opportunity to run his saber into Mosby. However, one of Mosby's lieutenants came between the two of them, and Forbes' saber went into the shoulder of the cavalry of the Confederate lieutenant. He went down, and then Mosby managed to get his pistol fixed. He fired his revolver again. At the exact same moment, Forbes' horse reared up, so he shot Forbes' horse in the head. So Forbes went down, and his horse trapped him underneath the body of the horse. And so Forbes couldn't extricate himself. The battle was so chaotic that pretty soon there were 3 or 4 Confederate troops right there to capture Forbes. And ironically, I'll just add this little post note. After the war was over, both Mosby and Forbes survived the Civil War. And oddly enough, years later, they became friends. Their families became friends and spent a lot of time socially with each other. So it's kind of an interesting story about after the war, the uh, the rapprochement, if you will, between the North and the South. Anyway, our story picks up with what happened to the soldiers that were killed by Mosby, the 13 Union soldiers. The official story is that they were killed around the church, and they were killed in the woods there, trying to get their horses or whatever, and that they were all buried in a trench. And later, the Union Graves Registration came back and took them and buried them someplace else. Supposedly, either returned to New York or Massachusetts, or a grave in D.C. No one knows because there's no record. The only thing that exists that tell us anything about what happened to those men is a letter from a woman, I forget her name, but she lived in Wellborn Estate, which is about 7 miles west of the church. How she knew any of this, I don't know, but she said that there was a grave dug, the Union soldiers were put in it, and later somebody came and took them out and removed them someplace else. So that's the official story. In the back of the cemetery, behind Mount Zion Church, there's a lot of graves there, but within the walls, but in the rear back corner, basically it would be the southwest corner, there are 12 gravestones, and they are supposedly cenotaphs, meaning they're just grave markers. There's no bodies there. They're just there to honor the 12 Union cavalrymen who died in that battle. And that's what I thought was back there. I didn't, I took my grandchildren out there a couple times to put little American flags on the graves on Veterans Day. Um, and I love that cemetery. I love that area. But the point of this whole podcast is what happened with my friend. So she wanted to see this cemetery, took her out there, and we walked around through the enslaved burial area because she wanted to see what that looked like. We were outside of the main wall, and we came in the back gate of the cemetery near where those soldiers' cenotaphs are located. And she was overcome with a feeling of dread and pain and pressure on her head and on her shoulders. Now, I have to say this has happened to her before. She's told me about other times when she's been places, uh, Gettysburg, the graffiti house down in Culpeper, Virginia, where she has felt something like this pressure and pain, and she's always just tried to get away from it or move away from it. And that's what happened when we were out there. She said, I need to get away. I need to get away. I can't stand up. I can't stand the pain. And we moved about maybe 15 yards, 20 yards away, back further up into the main part of the cemetery, and she was fine. So I I have a book called The Soul Unleashed, right? So I wanted to know what this was that she was experiencing. And she was kind enough. I said, if we go back to this place the next day, if we go back to this place and I bring a chair, would you consider just sitting there and trying to bear up under whatever this pain is and see what happens? She has no experience of being a medium, no experience of talking to anybody who's dead or any of that kind of stuff. And it was her first time in the cemetery. And she said that she would do it. So, like a trooper, if you will, we went back the next day. I lugged this chair, and I had her wait far enough away that she wasn't overcome by the feeling she gets. First of all, I wasn't even sure she was going to get the same feeling, but I set the chair up front of the cenotaphs, if you will, and asked her to come over. She came over. She was immediately hit by the same thing. Could barely stand up. I sat her down in the chair. She sat down with her head bent forward. Uh, the pressure, you'll hear it on the recording. She describes what was going on or what she was feeling. She couldn't move her head or her shoulders or her hands, which were on her thighs. And that is the experience that you're about to hear in this 10-minute audio. Now, it's a little bit hard to hear it. We've tried to improve the volume so that you could hear it, but I was trying to help her at the same time I was trying to record what was going on because I was as surprised as anybody that she would start to receive what you'll hear her getting from that area. And so after the recording, I'll come back and we'll talk about what it was that she experienced and the mystery or the controversy surrounding who's actually buried in this cemetery. Thanks. What do you feel?
Hurts.
What hurts?
My head, they're pushing my head.
Hey, just breathe.
Yeah.
Just breathe. Breathe. Tell me you're here to help them.
Help you.
Tell me you're here to be a help to them. There you go. Ask them how you can help them. What do you see? Relax. What do you see? Ask them to show you. That's it. Breathe. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. You're safe. Tell me what you're thinking.
Oh.
What is it? What is
They're
it?
hurting me.
How are they hurting you? How are they hurting you?
They're
Huh?
pushing my head down. I know.
Alright, ask them to stop.
Please stop.
Ask them to stop.
Stop.
Ask them to stop. There you go. Just breathe. Ask them to stop.
I don't want to hurt you.
Is that what they're saying? Okay. Ask them what they want.
What do you want?
There you go. Are they letting out? Okay. Ask them to show you. You're here to help them. Ask them to show you what they want. What do you see?
They want to go home.
They want to go home?
They want to go home. They're cold.
Okay. What else do they want? Just let them know you're here to help them. What else do they want?
They don't want to be here.
Okay.
They want to go home. They don't want to be here.
Okay.
I see little girls running. And tables, big tables set with food. Little kids just running around laughing.
Are the kids happy?
They want to go home.
Are the kids at their home?
I think so.
Do you want to go back to the kids? Go ahead.
One kid's name is Joey. I can hear somebody hollering Joey. And Billy. There's a Billy.
Good.
She says it real strong. She says, Billy.
You're helping them. They want to go back to Massachusetts or New York?
Where do you want to go back to? Home. Just want to go back home. Who else is here with you? Tick? Sounds like they're saying tick. Tick. They're friends. They're friends here. Tick. Were you in battle? Engaged in battle? Tick. Were you in battle around here?
What did they say?
Yes.
Can you ask him for his first name?
What is your first name? Tick.
What's his real first name?
What's your real first name? Rantic. Rantic. Tick. Just keep saying over, Tick.
Is it Patrick?
Is your name Patrick? Patrick. Patrick.
It's Patrick?
Patrick. He goes by Tick.
Is it Patrick Riordan?
Tick.
Patrick Riordan?
Is your name Patrick Riordan? I got nothing.
Have they let you go? Just relax. Anything else you can remember?
She scared me.
What scared you when they first grabbed you? He said, I'm not trying to hurt you?
But they want to go home. You said the Battle of Ball's Bluff. When was that?
He said the Battle of Ball's Bluff?
No, I'm asking you.
It was 3 years before these guys died. I don't
So
think
that's
they were
not
here.
that.
No, there was a cavalry battle right here, in this area. Right in the fields around here is where they fought. Is that what he made you feel?
Made me feel like I was walking through blood. The grass was stained with blood, or streaked with blood. But I didn't see horses either, so.
Anything else? I think his picture. That's Patrick York right there.
Oh, wow. That's where I heard Tick. Patrick. I kept hearing Tick. They said they were friends.
So was he Patrick, or was he friends with Patrick?
I don't know.
Maybe the men laying here with him were friends.
Yeah, I don't know.
There's a lot of Massachusetts cavalry.
Look at the dates. July 6, 1864.
Yeah.
They all
died in the battle here. That's why they're here.
That's why they're friends.
Okay, friends, this is Mike again. So let me try and explain to you what you just listened to. My friend sat down in the chair, and she was overcome by the same feeling she had the day before, which was the pain and the pressure. And you can hear me telling her, encouraging her to ask them to stop, and then to ask them what they wanted. And then you can very clearly, she said it in a very flat tone, like almost it wasn't her, saying they want to go home. She knew nothing about the history of the battle. She knew nothing about who was buried there. She knew nothing about the history of that whole area. And I was stunned when she said that. And then you can hear other things that come through to her. The woman in the yellow dress calling people on other names. But one of the most significant things, I think, was when she said the word tick. She later told me that she thought it was like tick-tock, like a clock. And she thought they were trying to tell her something about a clock. This whole time, by the way, she was still hunched over, her hood on because it was a very cold January day, and her eyes closed with her head pushed down. She had no clue anything about the markers. So when she said tick, and I said, ask them what the first name is, and she said tick again, I thought, I was just struck by the fact that we were sitting there in front of these grave markers, and I looked at the grave markers, and sure enough, right there in front of us, the one that she was next to was Patrick Riordan. And so I said, ask him if his name is Patrick, and she said Patrick, and then she said he goes by Tick. So that blew me away. And then when she said William or Billy and Joseph, there were also gravestones right there with a William and a Joseph from the cavalry unit that they all died together. And she said that they're friends here. And so again, she knew nothing about the cavalry or how that worked or any of that kind of stuff. And she picked up on all of that, and she just kept saying they want to go home. They're cold. I don't think they were cold, obviously, in a physical sense, but cold in the fact that they're far away from home, and they would like to go back to I don't know, back to Massachusetts, back to wherever they're from. I don't know, and I'm fascinated by whatever the story might be there. I am convinced, personally. I guess it's not hard to convince me because I believe in this stuff, but I'm convinced that there is something there that definitely impacted her, affected her, and she was definitely communicating with something or somebody that was giving her this vision that she saw and the words that she was saying. So that's what happened. Patrick Riordan, by the way, I went and looked up his history. He was a 19-year-old cavalryman from Massachusetts. And he was from a town where they had a lot of shoe factories. When the war started, he was only 15 years old, but by 1864, he was 19. And he signed up in March and right away went to a training area, learned how to be a cavalryman, came down here to Washington, D.C. with a bunch of other recruits. And he was immediately put in this special unit that was trying to find Mosby. Now, for a young man who hadn't been in combat, I can imagine that would be extremely stressful, standing watch at night or picket at night in an area where you're constantly subject to being attacked by guerrillas. And this was his first engagement. He had been in the Union Army for 97 days, and his first engagement, and he died there. And his mother filed for his pension just a couple months later. His mother was Mary. And I haven't had the opportunity to go to Washington, D.C. to look up the pension part, but he has a pension file, or she has a pension file. And I'd be blown off my my shoes here if there was something in there about him being called Tick. But apparently it's a diminutive or a form of endearment for people, Irish people, I guess, to sometimes be called Tick instead of Patrick, especially if he said it with an Irish. He was very strong. He was born in Ireland, so if he had a very strong Irish accent, his friends may have just called him Tick. But they were what they called messmates. They were very close friends apparently, and they all died together. I am personally convinced that something is still there. Somebody's still there. What would change my mind is if there was some type of record that would clearly indicate that those bodies were moved, or there's any kind of burial record any place that indicates that the three men there, William Dumoresque, Joseph Lovely, and Patrick Riordan, had been buried someplace else. The best of my knowledge and using all my fancy AI investigative tools, I find nothing else about those three men other than that they died in that battle. So that's the story. That's the mystery. Are they there? Are they not there? What was it that my friend tapped into? And in part two, you're going to see something that I did. I used dowsing rods. Again, I know nothing about dowsing rods, but you'll see in part two I tried it. And we'll see what happens to see if I could use that technique to determine if there's anything actually buried there. That's it for this particular version of the podcast. Again, you can reach me or contact me, mike@mikenicholas.com, and my website is mikenicholas.com, where I've got a bunch of other things there, including a lot of video orbs. But that and my book is also available there. Thank you. Bye-bye.